the power of this technology goes so far beyond what like the typical like table conversation about VR gives it credit for. You know, like we talk about it as like a useful tool or an immersive, fun experience, but what we're talking about is like truly transformational.
It should be perfectly possible to trick your brain into any experience if your brain can already do that itself naturally. So VR is almost like taking that ability for our brain to generate any experience for us and like putting it in our hands, which is wild.
Man, that's something in the history books. People are going to look back and be like, yeah, 2022, 2023. That's when education, after hundreds of years, finally upgraded.
We're in a strange time where our physical worlds are intersecting with our digital identities, and right now is a time to kind of determine what you want that to be.
Once you have full body tracking that works well and it's frictionless, right? Meaning it's easy to do.
Yes.
It's a whole new. It's not a game changer, it's a whole new game.
So maybe there will be some other people who would be curious to see what I'm learning, what I'm discovering, so to say. And that's how the Discover YouTube channel started.
Oh, not really disco VR, Discover.
Oh.
Yeah, I feel bad when people ask me about VR, or they're like, what do you do? Like, all right. You asked, here it comes.
I love VR, but I love going out and breathing fresh air. And not only was I stuck in VR for 10 days, I was stuck in one room because I was streaming, you know, the same space. I didn't see the sunlight. I totally lost track of what time everything was.
She dances with the robot. She does the first steps. She dances with that robot. She takes that thing off her fist. I have the video. I'm holding it hostage. She takes it off her head and she says, I gotta have it.
There are a few moments in my life I can remember very vividly. The day I got married, the day my kids were born, the day Facebook announced that they bought Oculus is one of those days. I was making chili.
I've been in a lot of gaming communities, and the VR community is by far the best community that I've ever been involved with.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the ever consistent Between Realities podcast.
What show is this again?
It's the Between Realities podcast. I almost said Between Realities VR podcast, you know, out of the years of which that's how I introduced the show. But we're Between Realities, and we're here, and it is amazing to be back in the saddle. Thank you for being here with us. I'm Alex, one half of the Between Realities crew, other half, of course, right here next to me.
Hey,
Skiva.
What's up, brother?
Great to see you, man.
Dude, for real, it's been great. I do feel like we look a little small today. Do we look small, people?
Okay.
Well, it doesn't matter. We're going to stay this size.
I know I look fresh today.
You do look fresh.
Maybe not small, maybe large, I don't know, but fresh for sure. Got a brand new haircut.
Nice.
Got the haircut in today, you know, as a special treat.
Look at this.
Yeah, I know, and this is my super fancy Under Armour home sports pullover.
Yeah, that's like a legit brand. That's like really nice.
It's legit.
From Resolution Games, I'm assuming.
Yep. Free shout out to Resolution. Well, I guess not free. I mean, they sent me the jacket. But shout out Resolution Games. We've always loved them, and they got me looking good today in this home sports pullover. So feels nice.
Dude, I really like that game, man. It's super fun. I think I like badminton the most. I used to love playing badminton as a kid, you know, and I don't know, it's just fun in there.
I haven't played it yet.
Oh,
I have to be honest. That's the only way I have to be. That's the only way I can be.
No, I got you.
And I haven't played it yet. But like I know it's good because Resolution Games made it. Like everything they do is
for sure. Everything they do is great.
Yeah. So, but I do want to play it. You know, I mean, there's a lot that we want to do and don't really have time for, as if it's not evident, right? We've been busy behind the scenes, I guess, working and having real life stuff go on.
There has been work, there has been parenthood, there has been medical things from family and me, and like just some burnout, and oh my God, it's been a lot. And So we were gone for a little bit, and it wasn't a mid-season break.
I know. We took a break.
We did.
And then we took a break, an unannounced break, but it feels good to be back. We're going to try to keep the weekly cadence, and hopefully we can. Like, I don't think it's going to be too much of a problem to like stay on it now that we've kind of got the ball rolling again. This is a new time and day yet again. Yeah. And frankly,
so people don't even know we're here at this time.
I know. Right? And frankly, it might switch again, we're trying to figure out where that comfortable space for us is right now so we can keep doing the show and keep staying present with the other stuff that we have going on.
Qcreator in the chat saying the midweek.
Amen. Dude, great to see you, Mike Newton. Thank you for being here. Also, shout out ClassyGrandma and Assassin32. You guys are amazing.
Hey, what's up, y'all?
GT in the house. Dude, ClassyGrandma gave us $20.
Oh, she's such a sweetheart.
I was going to hit a button, but I don't want to mess with this thing right now. ClassyGrandma said, give me some good details about what you've been up to. I want my money back. LOL, missed you guys. Well, we've been doing stuff. What did we do? We went to CES.
We did go to CES. We
had our party.
Yep.
It was awesome.
It was. I mean, so the party was great. I got to CES and immediately had like influenza A or whatever it was, and it just completely ruined me, and I was stuck in a hotel room. I like ordered an IV to my room and tried to like vitamin myself up, and it was so I missed most of actual CES. I was there for like 2 hours. I went in there when I started feeling a little better, so that was a bummer.
That totally sucks.
But the party went great.
Yeah, and then everybody got sick, and I'm willing to bet it was you that gave it to us all. Maybe your symptoms subsided. But
yeah, it's possible, and my apologies if that's the case. But I do feel like there were just a lot of people there while I was stuck in my hotel room that were like, "Yo, I'm sick too."
Yeah.
And like,
dude, that's par for the course at CES, bro.
It is.
I have gotten completely fucked up every single time I've gone there.
Yeah, it's like, COVID many times there, especially that first COVID run. That was fun. But this was worse than COVID.
Well, we knew what we were getting ourselves into that first time. We're like, smoking with a group of people and being like, we're definitely getting COVID after this. I wasn't expecting it this time. So.
Yeah, same. Oh well.
Ryan B, good to see you, dude. Thanks for being here. Kensei Gaming VR in the house.
Kensei
helping us build the Arizona VR scene. We did a little
what's up, brother?
Did a little triple date with our significant others with Kensei a couple weeks ago.
We did. That was super fun. It was like a 2v2 date, and we had and we got funny thing. We got a Waymo at the end of the night, and the Waymo pulled like into a Jack in the Box drive-through and pulled up to the drive-through window with no one in it, and just stopped at the drive-through window, and the drive-through workers like sticking their head out the window, and they're like, "There's no one in this car," and we're like, "Sorry, that's our ride." We got in the car and then couldn't figure out where the seatbelts were and held up the whole drive-through line. Man,
I've never seen an issue with Waymo. So, by the way, everybody, if you're wondering what that is, Waymo One is the name of a self-driving taxi service that is in a few cities in the country, but Phoenix is one of them, and it's amazing.
It is
absolutely amazing.
99% of the time.
Amazing. Like, I will get in. I will pay extra for the Waymo at this point to avoid having to deal with a Lyft driver or an Uber driver. Waymo is so sick.
Yeah,
it feels amazing to be in this car watching this steering wheel turning, and you're just like, nobody in there. It's so good.
It is really cool, and that's to be honest, that's like really the first time I ever had an issue with it.
Yeah,
and it was more comical. You know what I mean? It saw it as a little road.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And it is what it is. No one got hurt. So it was just a funny story.
Yep. RedSlashAce is here. It was great to see you at CES, bro.
Yeah, it was,
thanks
man.
Thanks for coming out. Thanks for coming to the party. I don't know if I've ever seen that man without his robotic haptic glove on his hand.
Right.
I think he's had it on his hand every single time I've ever seen him, which is amazing.
It's coming along.
But
looks cooler and cooler each time.
Feels good to be back.
I'm wearing wrong glasses.
Things with life are definitely intense, but happy to be here. Impact Reality is going great. I don't know. I've been doing business development at work now. The business development lead for Impact Reality, doing business development for the PR and marketing side of the company, while Eric Masher, our lovely lovely Eric Masher, our fierce leader, Eric Masher, who we all love dearly, heads up the BD efforts for Flat to VR Studios. So it's just been a lot, and I've never had to be responsible for so much stuff in my life Like, and it just keeps adding up, like just piling up on top of everything. And like, I don't know, the past couple of years I'm on like a emotional mental health roller coaster, you know. Like I like go up and I'm like feeling great and I'm accomplishing so much and I'm like crushing it at all times, and then like I go down for like a month or two, and it's like really difficult to like dig deep to get what I need to go, and that's probably a contributing factor as to why it's taken us a while to get here. But I feel like I see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Now.
Yeah. I mean, you know, at this point, I've like, thank you, man. And at this point, I've like learned to recognize what's happening, and I just like do my best to like, you know, like just dig deep and like push through. You know, it's not like I'm not, you know, I'm good. I'm safe. You know, I just like get sad and depressed sometimes. You know, it's difficult to not be.
I'm telling you, man, that's what happens when we don't hang out that much.
Amen.
You know what I mean?
Amen to that.
Yes.
Amen to that. So listen, we've got a little over an hour today for our conversation with today's guest, and I think we should probably dive into it. I'm so excited for this episode. This is going to be really, really awesome, and such a good one to come back on. I met today's guest in Rotterdam when we went to the VR Awards.
Oh, that's right.
Yep. And it was actually at the bar the night before the event, I think, or 2 nights before the event or something. But as you can see from the description, this guy hiked Everest. All right. And like, I don't know if there is a more badass thing that you can like say that you did.
I know.
You know, like is there a more hardcore, more badass thing that you can do as a human? I'm not sure, but he didn't stop there. He brought VR cameras with him and actually made a documentary that you can watch in virtual reality that brings you along with him up to the top of Mount Everest when he summits the thing. And I don't know. I'm so excited to learn about this journey and dive into this conversation. So everybody, please welcome to Between Realities, Mr. Alex Harz. Dude, hello.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
Hey,
brother. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for your patience while we, did some troubleshooting before the show. And
yes, everything was broken.
Yes, it was. Yeah. And thanks for making a VR movie, man. We're so excited to get into it.
Well, I greatly appreciate talking to you guys, man. It was good hanging out with you guys in Rotterdam for the XR Awards. And, you know, right then and there, the bond was only more solidified ever since we've talked since. So it's great hanging out with you guys, and I appreciate you taking some time to chit-chat with me about the Quest Everest VR and the Quest Everest and the Quest series and everything else that has to do with Mount Everest or VR, XR that you guys want to talk about.
We're going to get into it. And I mean, I mean this sincerely, Alex. I don't know if I've ever become friends with somebody faster in my life as when I met you,
right?
Like it's like I like looked at you, like we saw each other and we're like, dude, and I'm like, dude, and it's like, what's your name? We're homies now. Like it was so bizarre how quickly we became friends. But
I think I missed that initial interaction with the two of you. Were you like Alex?
Done. Boom. Yeah. I mean, is that how you remember it? That's how I remember it.
You were turning around talking to somebody, and then before you knew it, all of a sudden we had an instant bromance. I mean, first of all, I'd never meet any other Alexes, and to then meet another Alex in the circumstances that we did, and then to right away within the first 3 to 5 sentences just have everything line up. I was like, yeah, this is my man. This is my brother from another mother father.
That's right.
You know, as my good friend Tashi Sherpa always likes to say. And then all of a sudden you come back to the table, Skeevan, like, hey, what's going on? You know, and him and I are hugging at that point already.
Dude, it's so great. You know, and I got to share this too. Like, you know, I like to network. And when I network, sometimes we have libations, okay? This is just a part of business, people. This is what it is. AKA, I like to party with the VR community. And we were out at the bar the night before the event, the VR Awards, where we met. And once we got talking and you were telling me about Everest and all of that, and I realized that you're like kind of a beast, like I can't help it after I've had a drink or two to like poke the bear a little bit when I find one, you know, like because some of these dudes in our community are hardcore, like yourself, Alex. Like we've got dudes who live in the gym, like GT or Mateo, and like you touch them on the shoulder and it's like a bowling ball, and you're like, whoa, what is that, man? You know, and like I don't know, like I get a drink or two in me, I feel a little confident. I'm like, I'm strong. like, I'm a badass. Let's see how I stack up against this guy. So I like kind of push on him a little bit, you know, and Alex was there for it. And he was like rolling with the punches and all of that. And I'm like, come on, man, I want to feel the power, and just kind of provoking him. And I'm so glad that you're a nice guy, because if you weren't and that went south, I don't know how it would have gone for me, because I remember you threw your hand or like around my waist and like gripped my side, and you're a climber and you got that climber's grip. And the next day I could feel your hand. I could feel his hand where he gripped me on the side and like pulled me in close, and I like felt it the next day, his fingers. I was like, dude, that guy is a monster. So thanks for not destroying me, man. I appreciate that.
You know, it was just a love brand between two brothers that have been separated since childbirth. That's all.
Amen to that. Amen to that, dude. Well, I'm so excited to get into this, because it's rare that you get to talk to somebody who has accomplished a feat like you have, like summiting Mount Everest. Like I said, it's got to be the most badass thing that you could possibly do as a person. And it's even rarer when we have this like Venn diagram overlap with the VR space, the fact that you actually made a VR movie out of it called The Quest Everest VR. And that is so damn cool. I watched the documentary, of course, and went along with you on your journey. And I don't know how you cut that down. Like, I was like, I mean, because there's 3 episodes, and I mean, how long is it? Maybe like 35 minutes or so, something like that, 40 minutes?
Yeah, about 27 is about the total runtime if you did the long form, and then a little bit longer if you break it up into 3 episodes, because there's 2 versions of them depending on what platform you watch it on.
So 27 minutes, but the climb took how long?
52 days.
52 days. Can you imagine cutting down 52 days worth of like footage into 27 minutes?
No.
That's wild.
No, wow. I don't think and that's kind of what I was going to ask you. Like, I mean, I think you mentioned before the show when we were talking that you had like 64 hours of footage or something like that.
Yeah, because we shot everything in 2D and VR, so you know it's a combination series. So we have 2 productions out relating specifically to the Everest, and you know it's an ongoing series, like I said, the Quest series. And the Quest Everest is a 97-minute documentary, came out about 2 months ago, and you can see that on Amazon, Apple TV, and all that. And then the Quest Everest VR, which is the 26-minute VR version that coincides with it. So the idea behind it is watch the 97-minute documentary on Amazon in 4K. Now put on your headset and experience Everest over the course of 27 minutes. And with those 63 hours that we chopped down, we knew that in the headset world it was going to be a little bit different than, for example, the linear 2D world, where in a feature documentary of 90 minutes or more is not a problem. But we knew that under the headset, most people will only spend 8 to 12 minutes at a time. So we wanted to make it into a range under 30 minutes that people would enjoy. And we broke it up then in basically 3 segments based on the expedition itself: the trek to base camp, the rotations up the mountain to acclimatize, and then the summit itself.
Well, that's very nice, but I can't imagine watching episode 1 and not immediately clicking on episode 2 to continue the journey, because he's got it split up into like 3 main chunks. The first chunk is the hike to like the base camp, and then the next chunk is like the climb, like going up in the elevation, and then the third chunk is getting to the summit. So there's like 3 like main chunks of the journey that you get taken along on, and I want to dive into some of the details on that, on the journey itself. But before we do, I want to kind of like figure out like what went through your brain to just make you realize, like, yeah, this is it. I'm hiking Everest. Like, were you like crushing hardcore challenges before you decided to go on Everest? Like, how, and like, what made you think you were the guy? Like, how did you prepare for it? So anyway, I know I'm asking a lot right now, but like, what happened first? Like, where did you come from? Like, what were you involved in before you started this journey?
Here's a crazy thing, Alex. So I was sitting on my couch in the flatlands of Omaha, Nebraska after a long soccer practice. I was a high competitive soccer player, and I was coming home. I was about 14 years old, and I was sitting on my couch after a long 2 to 3 hour practice, and I was just sitting down, slamming a liter of Mountain Dew and smashing some Cool Ranch Dorito potato chips. And then I was staring at a TV, and I saw something about Mount Everest. And right then and there, I told myself that one day I would climb that mountain. out of sight, out of mind for many, many, many years. And then I'm sitting on my couch here in Denver, Colorado, watching random daytime television. Absolutely nothing to do with mountaineering, Mount Everest. I wasn't into mountaineering. I wasn't into rock climbing. I wasn't into any of that stuff. I was a traditional college soccer athlete and so on. But for some stupid reason, maybe I was watching Days of Our Lives. I have no idea. It was like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. For some stupid reason, that recollection of me promising myself that I would climb Mount Everest one day popped back in my head. And that next day I started. I had no idea how to start the journey. I had no idea how to get going in the mountaineering world, but I knew that Colorado had great access to it because we had 54 peaks out here that are above 14,000 peaks, and they call them the 14ers. So that weekend I went and climbed my first 14er. It was the middle of January, in the middle of winter, with a bunch of snowboarding gear on, overweighted, sweating my ass off, had no idea what I was doing, post holing up to my chest. It was absolutely miserable, but I made it to the summit. I did a couple of more of those, miserable as can be, but I made it to the summit. And then I was like, you know what, I got to kind of get more formal about how to go about this Everest dream if I want to make this a reality, because you can't just kind of wing it. So I got into wilderness survival and mountaineering classes and rock climbing and lead climbing and all the other stuff that you learn in order to try to go to high altitude peaks. And then I started climbing in other places too. I went out to Washington, climbed Mount Rainier. I went down to Argentina and climbed the highest mountain in South America called Aconcagua to test myself at altitude, because I knew that altitude is kind of the great equalizer. You have no idea how your body is going to respond until you go to those altitudes. And so unfortunately that's a genetic thing, and most people don't know that, and most people don't realize that, and you can't train for it. And so you have to kind of choose your parents wisely. And so I had to start testing myself at altitude, not just physically, for the mountaineering aspects. Then I went to Alaska and I climbed the highest mountain in North America called Denali, or Mount McKinley, and that's where the light bulb moment came for the quest, and this whole process that we're talking about now. I was standing on the summit at about 11:30 at night under that perpetual Alaskan summer sun, with just me and my climbing partner, had the whole summit to ourselves. And I'm looking out over the Alaska range, and I took in one of the most beautiful views I've ever seen in my life up until that point. And then that epiphany came. I said, you know what? I can't just do this in order to honor our childhood promise, all the commitment, all the money, all the sacrifice, all the high risk it takes to try to make this dream a reality for just that 15 minutes or so on the summit to see this amazing view. I had to do something bigger with it. And that's when the Quest series began. And that's when I had the idea, okay, why don't I do a documentary series? And the first one will be going to Nepal and going to Mount Everest to not only fulfill a childhood promise, because if I couldn't keep a commitment to myself, how could I honor my commitments to anyone else? But also to bring this to the rest of the world, because I knew that 99% of the people on this planet will never have the opportunity or the desire to be dumb enough to get off the couch and try to climb Mount Everest. And that's how the whole thing started.
Man, can I just say, we have like a peak athlete on our show right now. This man is like in such amazing physical form to be able to climb mountains like this, and we share the same diet, Mountain Dew and Doritos.
Yeah. I mean, for real though, like you're sitting there eating Mountain Dew and Doritos, and then in like 1 second you make the promise to yourself that you're gonna hike Mount Everest and you're gonna commit to that. Like, not everyone does that, like I mean
that's a drive right there.
Well, and it's also like, wow. I don't know, are you like awake in a way that not everyone is? Because like is it like maybe this idea of like the finite existence that we have like within our lives, and you want to like check off as many achievements as possible? Like where are you coming from when you make that kind of promise to yourself?
Well, I think initially I was just so enamored about what Mount Everest was, and since 1953, since it was first climbed, it was iconically arguably the most iconic adventure experience and most iconic landmark on Earth. And it just really had a deep impression on me that I said, you know what, I'm gonna do that one day. But the fact that I forgot about it for so long, I didn't even take action at 14, obviously, but to then all of a sudden just have this random recollection watching Ellen DeGeneres or something on TV. I have no idea what I was watching at the time. But again, for no particular reason. But what I did realize is that I'm a man of my word, and if I couldn't keep my promise to myself, especially as a childhood commitment, something that goes back a long ways that you made to commit to yourself and a promise that you made, and I was like, you know what kind of man am I? How can I guarantee my commitments to anyone else if I can't even guarantee my commitments to myself? And so it was one of those things that I had to do based on the commitment that I made and the amount of just straight involvement that I had emotionally to that mountain. That's how much it affected me at such a young age.
Wow. I mean, and you know, I want to get into the meat and potatoes of it, but you know, I guess fast forwarding to the end a little bit, you know, you've accomplished this. Like, you have done this. Like, it is off of your to-do check mark. Like, is there like, I don't know, like I'm someone who I guess like struggles to like relish in my accomplishments. You know, like I'll like accomplish something and it feels really good for like a day, you know, and then like the next day I think about like the other things that I could do, you know, or like, you know, you know, maybe it wasn't as that hard, you know, or like whatever. I like start to diminish it, I guess, a little bit. I imagine it's probably difficult to diminish climbing Mount Everest because you can't really climb a higher mountain than that. So like, do you feel like a sense of like satisfaction or fulfillment from that, or is there still a drive to accomplish more?
Yeah, there's definitely a drive to accomplish more because it's kind of the start. You know, that was the validation of this series, the idea that I have to have this 2D and VR combination series that I could bring to the world, to basically take people to these exotic locations, to give them access to rarely seen, you know, footage and content that you'd hardly ever see or never have the opportunity to see, and to be able to take those people along on this kind of educational thrill ride. So I knew that that was a start to that process. But on the same token, it was also a culmination of that childhood promise. So it was very exciting, you know, at the time, because I honored that promise, and I came down with 63 hours of footage, and, you know, over the course of 52 days of trying to climb Mount Everest. But on the same token, I really haven't had much time to really kind of reflect, like you said, on the accomplishment, or to kind of take it all in, because I'm so engaged in this project still, you know, and the fact that this is an ongoing series, that sometimes it takes situations like this, sitting down to talk with you guys, to really kind of let it hit home. Wow, I actually did climb Mount Everest, and wow, actually I filmed it in 2D and have a VR film and a two-dimensional film and all this other kind of stuff that goes along with that process of climbing the mountain. That if it's not these situations that I'm having with you guys right now, I might not even have a chance to reflect on that often. It's really weird.
Well, you're welcome.
I have a question here, right? So you're sitting here and you're telling yourself you're going to climb Mount Everest, and I'm sure you did some research before just running up the mountain and making this final trek to the top. So from what I'm seeing here, since December of 2024, 335 people have died attempting to climb Mount Everest. 200 of those bodies have never even been recovered because it's so treacherous to get up this mountain, and it would cost so much money to recover these people. Like, I'm assuming you knew this? What were your thoughts when you're like, okay, I'm going to do this anyway. 335 people have died failing at this, and I'm going to go up there with camera gear and all of this equipment I need to survive and film all of this. Were you afraid? Were you afraid that you would? Because it seems like there's a good chance you could have died up there.
That's a great question, and you're absolutely right, Skiva. You know what it was? Is I think what I had my advantage at the time was, it's almost like a war reporter. I'm so focused on trying to film these productions that sometimes I was kind of numb or not aware or ignorant to the danger around me. You know, so it's almost like that war reporter situation where they're sitting behind the camera lens, just documenting bullets going by, IEDs going off, whatever the situation is. But they don't think that they're in the action. They don't think they're actually going to be a combatant or someone that's going to get injured, because, hey, I'm not fighting for, let's say, Russia or Ukraine. You know, I'm just here documenting it. But bullets don't care. And especially random bullets or explosions, they don't care. They don't care what you're wearing, what you look like. And it's either right place, wrong time kind of a situation. And so hence a lot of war reporters and people that try to cover, you know, combat situations get injured and get killed. And so I had this almost false sense of not security, but a false sense of being disassociated with the situation at times, especially when you're crossing, you know, for example, a ladder or 5 ladders tied together, you know, with fishing twine, and they're moving 3 to 5 feet up and down like this over a 1,000-foot bottomless crevasse with only 1 inch of purchase on the front of your boots and the back of your boots on the rung of those ladders, which are your spikes, your crampons that are, you know, trying to dig into the snow to walk across these Home Depot style ladders. Normally that will freak out a lot of people, and I saw people freak out. You're talking about a bunch of alpha type A people that are on Everest, highly trained athletes, they that have been there and trained their whole life for this situation, and they get there and they start shaking right when they get into the Khumbu Icefall, which is only the start of the climb, and then you see them freeze up like a deer in headlights, and that's the end of it, right? But I think the fact that I had to film that ladder crossing, and that I had to think about, okay, VR and 2D and all this other kind of stuff, maybe, protected me that way. So it's kind of a slippery slope, because it can get you killed because you're kind of being ignorant to the situation, but on the same token it can also kind of keep you alive and move you forward, because you're constantly lying to yourself about why you're here and why you can continue to suffer, because you shouldn't be there and your body doesn't want to be there. So it was a really weird balance between those two situations, and getting hit by an avalanche, or crossing those ladders, or going across the racks that are the size of office buildings that can collapse, or being on a knife edge ridge that's 18 inches wide and you have a 12,000 foot drop one way and a 7,500 foot drop this way. These are things that if you're not in the right headspace can freak you out pretty quick. Or seeing a dead body, for example, like I said, 335, actually it's 340 now that are dead on Everest. So yeah, and when you see a dead body, that really kind of puts you in check. And I can talk about a situation if you guys want to about that later on or right now.
Yeah, go
but
for
it's
it.
definitely something that yeah. So a perfect example was I was at about 27,300 feet, coming right through the middle of the night, because when you go for the summit, you have to leave from the last camp 4, which is the staging ground, to go for the summit, and you leave in the middle of the night, because you want to try to get to the summit and back down while in daylight. Up in the death zone where you stage from was 26,000 feet or 8,000 meters, and they call it the death zone because your body can only stay up there for a finite amount of time, typically 1 to 2 days. Otherwise you're going to die no matter who you are. So you're trying to race the clock to get up to the summit and back down, and then back out of the death zone before you ultimately die. And so you start in the middle of the night to make your final ascent for the summit, and I was all by myself at this time, climbing through the middle of the night with my expedition leader friend of mine that was leading out, and I stopped right as the sunrise was coming out over Tibet, and I was going to take in the most beautiful sunrise of my life from 27,300 feet, and I'm just stopping there, I'm filming a little bit, and I'm just, no one's around me, and I'm staring into the distance over the Tibetan plateau, and I see the 5th highest mountain in the world and the 4th highest mountain in the world, and I see this amazing orange just blow up all around me, and then all of a sudden I see this weird rock that's about 10 or 15 feet in front of me, and as more sun came up, that rock turned from brown to red. And then when I saw more of it, I was like, oh my God, that's not a rock, that's a dead body. And then not only is it a dead body, he's wearing the exact same outfit that I am. So I had this really weird, almost out-of-body experience where I'm staring at myself laying dead in the snow and starting to question myself, why am I not that guy laying there? Who is this guy? What's the difference between me standing and me being in that snow? Don't sit down, keep moving 3 feet straight ahead, because if you sit down, you might never get back up. You can do it, keep going. And just this constant racing of trying to motivate, convince myself, and to try to keep myself from, possibly losing it mentally, and just keep going, keep focused on the job at hand, blah, blah, blah. And so, yeah, these are the kind of situations that, you don't plan, when you're training for Everest and that long process of trying to get there, but then all of a sudden they're thrown in that situation that you got to deal with it.
Dude, it literally sounds like a fucking nightmare. Like I've had nightmares of like hiking or something and like trying to come down, or even in real life, I've had a couple of scares. Like I used to live in Sedona, Arizona, 2 hours north of Phoenix, and there's some awesome hiking there. And Thunder Mountain is the biggest peak in Sedona, and I hiked Thunder Mountain, and on our way down, we kind of like lost our path down and like ended up in a sketchy ass spot. And then like in that moment, I'm like way up there. We don't like, this is not good. And I'm thinking to myself, like, how did I get here? Like, how do I get down? Like, why did I sign up for this? Like, all that stuff is like racing through my head, and that was not Everest. You know what I mean? Like, now granted, it was still very dangerous, and like we figured it out and it was all good, but like, I don't think I could do it. Like, I'm pretty sure I would break and crumble, especially like on some of these views, because when you watch the documentary, you're there like basically sitting on Alex's shoulder as he steps across those ladders that he's talking about, and as he's walking on these ridge lines with just the drops on both sides, and you can look down and you see those drops, and you can look up and it's just 360 white mountain peaks. It's absolutely phenomenal, honestly, so beautiful, but also so terrifying. And I was able to like feel a little bit of it, you know, by watching the documentary in VR. Like I felt a little bit of that anxiety, and I can only imagine what it's like.
And you're on a mountain, and you're in a mountain in Arizona, which it
was warm.
It's warm, and on Everest it can drop down to -76 Fahrenheit, -60 Celsius. That is insane. That is insane. That can kill you. Like exposure to your skin at those temperatures, like frostbite, like all kinds of horrible things can happen to your body just from the cold. Never mind if you tripped and fell, or you fell off a mountain, right? Like that's absolutely wild. I just can't imagine. We've talked a lot on this show about like, what happens when you die, or the fear of death, and just like, I would be terrified.
Yeah.
I truly would be.
Yeah. Was that like that moment that you just talked about? Do you think that was like the hardest moment for you on the way up, or were there other moments where you were like struggling to keep it together mentally and like really waffling on where you were and what you were doing?
Yeah, because the mountain you can kind of break down essentially almost into 4 phases, because the objective danger is different in each phase. So then the amount of response that you have to a given danger is completely different, because they are significantly different. So like the first part of the mountain, the Khumbu Icefall, a lot of people say it's the deadliest 2 miles on Earth. And the reason being is it's not only the highest icefall in the world, a moving glacier that moves downhill between 3 to 6 feet a day. So you've got crevasses that get wider. You have, Jenga blocks, seracs, like I said earlier, their size of building to just fall over like dominoes and wipe out the whole route. For example, we went through the icefall 8 times, and every time it was different, because it was getting wiped out by avalanches and serac collapses and so on. So it's a game of Russian roulette. As soon as you step foot on Everest, it becomes a game of Russian roulette, especially in the Khumbu Icefall. So because you can't control when a serac's going to collapse, you can't control if a ladder is going to punch through a crevasse when you're walking over the top of it. And I saw examples of that, when I was on Everest. You can't control an avalanche coming off the west shoulder of Everest, or off of Nuptse, mountain that's on the other side of the icefall coming down. You can't control these things. So it's completely out of your control. So you're literally just spinning the chamber and click, spinning the chamber and click, and you hope you're at the right place at the right time versus the wrong place at the wrong time. And if you can't give up that control, and you're going to freak out, because a lot of people can't give up that control, and I saw that. And so again, maybe that's where that war reporter analogy popped into me, that helped me survive that situation, or to deal with that situation in a fairly even keel scenario. In another scenario is we were actually about to get hit by an avalanche, and the expedition leader, my buddy Ryan, was right in front of us, and he just turns around and goes, all right, duck and clip, which means you duck down and you clip into the rope. It's like almost the old World War II, get underneath the desk for a nuclear bomb. What is that going to save you? Absolutely nothing. If the avalanche hits you, and it hits you with a full force, all it's going to do is what part of your body is still connected to the rope, if any, versus actually saving your life. So, but what I did was, oh my God, I got to get to my camera. Where's my camera? Where's my camera? Versus ducking in cover in trying to go into turtle survival mode. I was thinking, I got to film this, again, because of my ignorance of being disassociated with that situation, because I was filming at that time. Luckily, it was only the tail end, and you catch it in the 97-minute 2D documentary. It's just the tail end spray. But then the guy that was in front of me, my climbing teammate in front of me, turned around, and he was panting, and you could see he was completely like, freaking out and trying to hold it together. So it's these kind of situations, depending on where on the mountain, will give you a different response, and you just gotta hopefully be prepared mentally for those situations if they arise.
Yeah. Did everybody make it that you went with?
No, not everybody made it, but luckily nobody got killed and no one got seriously injured. I have permanent nerve damage in all 10 of my toes. I lost 27 pounds of muscle mass on the mountain. It looked like I escaped a concentration camp by the time I got back to Kathmandu. But again, I'm humbly honored to have made it, and I can't complain, because heck, I'm not playing soccer anymore, so it's 3 feet from my heart. I don't need those tactile toe responses, and on top of that, I can kick the wall and I don't even feel it anymore. So that's a benefit. So, so at the end of the day, you just got to kind of put everything in perspective, and the fact that we're sitting here talking about it, is enough of an honor in its own right.
Well, dude, yeah, it's so impressive, and it's so cool to, like, it really is cool to like be along on the journey in the VR experience. experience. And like, you know, you touch on a lot of things in it, and somehow, again, how you trap that down to less than a half hour, I'll have no idea. But you touched on a lot of the aspects of hiking this mountain during those minutes. And one of the aspects I never even imagined is the fact that during your time up there, you are spending days hiking in elevation just to come back down and do it again the next day. Like, you're not summiting every day. You're not always making progress. You're doing things to acclimate so you can accomplish this. And you're like hiking up and then coming back down, sleeping, hiking up, coming back down, sleeping. Like, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because like, I feel like most people would never even, like, I never even imagined that would be a part of what you would have to do to accomplish this.
Yeah, absolutely right. Most people don't realize that it takes 52 days to climb Everest. They figure, oh, you just go to Everest and you climb it like a normal mountain, for example, in Flagstaff or one here in Colorado, and it might take a couple days. But no, the trek to base camp alone takes 9 days. And then from base camp to the summit back took 43 days. And the reason why it takes that is exactly what you were saying, Alex, is you have to acclimatize. And what that means is you're trying to shock your body into producing more red blood cells in order to carry more oxygen in your system. Because at base camp is at 17,500 feet. And in base camp alone, there's never been a civilization, a permanent civilization that high, because you can't stay there indefinitely. Over a course of a calendar year, you would die if you try to stay there for a whole year, because our bodies aren't allowed or meant to stay at that altitude. And so what you have to do is you have to acclimatize to produce more red blood cells in order to try to carry more oxygen so you can actually physically move to work your way up the mountain. So what you're doing is you're going up, for example, the first time you're doing little test runs in the ice fall to get used to, you know, the craziness and the climbing of over Jenga blocks and the crevasses and all that stuff. You come back down. Then you work your way up to Camp 1, which is at 19,700 feet above the ice fall in this area called the Western Coombe, which is basically a big valley or a big bowl that's surrounded by Mount Nuptse, Mount Lhotse, and Mount Everest in front of you. And so you're in this big bowl that's also a crevasse-filled valley that now gives you this pseudo of a flat space. You spend a few days up there to get your body used to 19,700 feet and to slowly start moving towards Camp 2, which is at 21,000 feet. And then you come all the way back down. Then you go back up, and this time when you go back up, you try to make it up to Camp 2, and you try to spend a few days up there to try to acclimatize and to work your way up to Camp 3, which is dug right into the side of this 5,000-foot wall of ice known as the Lhotse Face, which is what connects Camp 2 to Camp 4. There's a Camp 3 that sits in the middle of it, and then it connects to Camp 4. And so you try to get to about 23,500, 23,600 feet, because at that point, body can no longer acclimatize anymore. So there's no reason to go any higher until you go for the summit. So then you come all the way back down to base camp, and then you wait. And now you're waiting for a different reason why you're going up to trying to go for the summit. And that is you're waiting on the monsoons, actually, that develop off the coast of Bangladesh and off the coast of India, and they push up into the Himalayas. And when they push up into the Himalayas, it's at that time that it actually moves the jet stream that goes over the summit of Everest for most of the year. Like right now, you can't even go to the summit of Everest because the jet stream's flying over the top of it, and it might be 100-mile-an-hour winds, so it's impossible. Now you're talking negative 70, negative 80 below zero temperatures, you know, and it's just not feasible.
It would just chuck you off the top, right? It would
chuck you right off the top, yeah. And of course, the amount of hypoxia and the amount of exposure that you would have to that kind of temperature and wind speed would just kill you. And so what you're waiting on, and again, it's not like a weather forecast where you say, oh, today it's going to be 72 and sunny like you would get in Phoenix or here in Denver. It's a global weather pattern that you're actually looking at. Matter of fact, we got our weather projections from a guy in Belgium, nowhere close to Nepal, but he was one of the best experts in the world for predicting the high pressure systems that spin around the earth, the jet stream as it travels all the way around the earth as it does, the monsoons that were developing out of India and coming up in Nepal. And then you try to time those factors that gives you that little bit of a window, and it's always in May. It's anywhere from the 9th of May up to the 27th of May each year, depending on when the monsoons start to push up, and it's variable. It's never the same, so one year could be 1 day, 2 days, could be a week, and you just don't know. But you try to make these projections based on when that monsoon is going to push that jet stream off the summit far enough either into Tibet or off into the east, where you can say, all right, now, if we time it right, wind speed is going to be low enough that we can try to go for the summit at that time, and that there's not going to be any kind of storming. For example, like happened in 1996 with the Everest disaster that you see that you can read about it in the Thin Air, or the documentary In the Thin Air, or the Hollywood movie Everest, and so on. So it's a calculated guess, and when you make that decision and when those projections come, that's when you go for the last time from base camp for the summit, and hopefully you got it right. And if you did, you might make it, you might not, you might die, you might come back down with 63 hours of footage. You just don't know.
That's so intense.
Wow.
It's so intense. All right, so so VR, like, I want to know, like, because apparently, yeah, I mean, you knew that you wanted to do this as a 2D and a VR movie when you made your plans to hike Everest. Did you have exposure to VR before? Like, did you, like, what made you realize that it needed to be a VR movie?
Yeah, man, a good question. The answer is no, and the reason why was I love first-person shooters. And I was sitting playing a game. I was playing a game in my game room at that time, and I was like, you know what? What if we took it a step further? I'm already going to mortgage my house, which I did. I'm already risking my life to go climb Everest, and then try to film it and so on. I was like, why don't I try to take it a step further and see if we can film this in VR? Because if I did it in a first-person VR perspective, it would be the closest possible experience of what it's like to climb Everest without being dumb enough to get off the couch and try it yourself. Because as you know, the only way you can get that immersion is in VR. The 2D screen, I don't care if it's a 120-foot screen, I don't care if it's an IMAX theater, does not give you that.
But how did you know that? Were you just assuming it because you, like, saw people using it, or like did you go and test it or something and then say, okay, yes, this is definitely a good medium for this?
No, I didn't originally test it, but I saw some content of it, and I was like, man, that'd be amazing. Imagine if you were actually, like, with me, climbing all the way to the summit of Everest, like, Halo or Gears of War in a first-person shooter environment. So you're actually experiencing the mountain, and to see it in 360 degrees, and actually to see how steep it is, to see how vast it is, to see what it looks like to climb it, because no matter what, you can never do it justice. And I guess the closest example would be maybe, for example, the Grand Canyon. I'm sure you've been to the Grand Canyon, or people that have been to the Grand Canyon, you stand on the edge of the rim and you look out to the grandiose vastness of the Grand Canyon, how big it is, how deep it is, and so on. And then you take a picture, and then you come home and you look at your picture or your Instagram photo, and it's like, man, that's pretty sad. That looks nothing like that, so you can't get that perspective in the 2D linear, medium. But if you have that headset on, or if you shoot in 360, now you can really see how grandiose and how big and how, massive of an experience that is. And so that was the idea behind it. And I didn't know if it was going to work. I didn't know if the idea was going to work. I didn't know if I was even going to be able to get the footage because of the technical aspects of filming on Everest, and cameras freezing and batteries not working and all the different things that happen because of how cold it is and how neurotic the weather is. But I was like, you know what, let's try it anyway, and we gave it a whack. And so now it just turned out to be the only first-person virtual reality set of Mount Everest. And so again, I'm humbly honored to have done it, and lucky enough to be able to bring it to the world. So
tell me more about the technical aspect. I'm a technical guy. I love video production and all of these things. I would love to know how you picked out your cameras. What kind of things can happen to a camera in such cold weather? How do you keep them charged? How do you unload your footage? Like, how do you do all of that in such crazy, like, in an environment that just wants to kill you all the time, and you're out there messing with cameras, and how does that affect the equipment? Give me some insight on this.
It's brutal on the equipment, absolutely brutal. For example, it's probably like taking a Tesla in 20 degree below zero weather, and then all of a sudden, you think you got 150 miles left, and it's only 35 miles left. Because that's the same effect on batteries. So what happens is, first of all, we knew that charging was going to be a serious issue. As we were trekking towards base camp, we had to charge our batteries all through solar power. There's no electricity to plug into to hook up our MacBooks and our PCs and our drives to dump dailies down every day as we were filming along the trek and so on. Yeah, back in Kathmandu, we could do that in the hotels. Again, if you watch the 97-minute The Quest Everest documentary, we talk about the spirituality and Buddhism and Hinduism, and about a lot of other things that aren't directly related to the climb of Everest. And so people want to watch that, they can see, the real deep cultural aspects of this whole thing. And in those environments, yeah, we could charge the batteries at night, and we could dump the footage on the laptops and all that. But once we started trekking, You know, the 9-day trek to base camp, there's days that we missed dumping footage and doing our dailies because we didn't have any battery power. We just couldn't fire up the MacBook, or we couldn't get the batteries to charge the drives that were connected to the MacBook. So now we had to wait another day and hope that we had sun in the next village that would then be able to, with the solar panels, charge our battery packs that we had that our Apple computer and our PCs and our drives were running off of. So again, you're improvising, and so now you're backlogging, trying to catch up. Once we got the base camp, we had kind of like a base camp setup. We had a dome tent there that we were dumping dailies and cataloging stuff and so on. But again, there was times where there would be no sun for 3 days straight at base camp, so now we had no power. So now we're trying to just mentally take notes, write stuff down, say, oh, this is what we shot, let's get back to it, and just double time it once we have power again. When we're up on the mountain itself, because we were filming, you know, we had 9 cameras going up the base camp, but then when we went up on the mountain, it was only 3 2D cameras and the VR camera. And then the biggest limiting factor there, besides the batteries and the temperature and stuff, was, well, in order to shoot a documentary, a VR or a 2D documentary, doesn't matter, is being able to climb the mountain. Well, that eliminates 99% of the people that want to pick up a camera to climb the mountain. So I knew that I had to film. I knew that my expedition leader friend Ryan had to film, and I knew the head Sherpa that was going to be on the mountain with us. I gave him a camera that he had to film, and so now it was going to be us that were going to do the rest of the filming from the icefall on up. But again, now you're still had to deal with the battery freezings, you know, the memory card issues. How much do you take to Camp 1? How much are you going to take to Camp 2, knowing that we're going to be there for 3 days? Well, you kind of almost had to over-prepare, which is horrible because now you're carrying more weight. But you knew you couldn't just say, oh, let's just get another memory card. Oh, let's just call a helicopter and fly it up here. Or let's get another battery pack. Well, if it ran out, tough shit, you're out of juice. You know, so I carried more stuff than I needed to. But even that was getting really close because, again, the battery life was at 25%. So whatever the battery said, for example, for the Canon, for the Sony, for the GoPros or whatever, for the Blackmagic, forget about it. It was about 25% of whatever the life was supposed to be. And again, you had to keep your cameras close inside your down suit or inside your sleeping bag with hot water bottles, you know, keeping them at your feet in order to keep them from fogging up, so then you could actually shoot and they would start up and then film and then put them away again before they froze up. And so it was this constant, you know, tug of war with the tech, you know, all the way up to the top of the mountain. And of course the summer day was, you know, even more miserable because now you're completely isolated and hoping that your gear was going to work. And again, luckily it did.
Wow. What's that's wild, man. You know, tech doesn't work a lot of times in absolutely perfect conditions. Like this one. Yeah, right. Yeah, like today, right? So I can't imagine trying to get all this tech working while you're trying to survive, while you're trying to, hopefully, you know, the sun is up for X amount of time and we can only charge during this amount of time. That's a lot. That's a lot to rely on technology that just isn't meant to work in those types of conditions. Yeah, man, that's just so crazy. What was your average weight that you were carrying when you were making a lot of these hikes with all the cameras, all your gear, all the, you know, any water, food that you had to bring? What did it all kind of come out to?
That's a good question, and I never really asked, and I never really waited. Even though I had like a mobile scale at base camp, I didn't want to know because then I knew that was a mental thing. I didn't want it because it was more than I thought. Then all of a sudden starts to play on your mental, you know, focus of, oh God, because you're constantly struggling all the time. So it's like, and then you have your mind starts to wander, God damn, 45, 50 pounds, whatever it is in your pack. You're thinking, okay, I didn't even want to know. So I don't do the God honest truth. I don't know the answer, but it's also variable because depending on where you're going, right? You know, when you're trying to move loads, sleeping bags and equipment to go to Camp 1 or Camp 2 in order to bring your down suit that you're going to use on the summit day, but you're not going to use it the rest of the time, or your down sleeping bag that you're going to use for the summit push, but not use it at the rest of the time. You know, so you're moving multiple times, you know, while you're acclimatizing to try to generate more oxygen in your system. You're also moving that gear. So it varied all across the board. Sometimes I was carrying very little. Other times I was carrying, you know, where my bag was stuffed, you know, full with stuff. So, you know, I never knew that answer, you know, and I trained, you know, to train forever. I was training 2 to 3 hours a day, 7 days a week for a calendar year before I left. I didn't take one day off. I had a full routine. I just stopped drinking for a year, you know, the whole 9 yards. Matter of fact, I had my first drink in a calendar year at Everest Base Camp, of all places, you know. So, you know, I knew what I was doing then, because I was hyper focused on how many steps, how much weight, how many miles, blah, blah, blah. But once I got there, I didn't want to know because I wanted to just be focused and have nothing to tell me mentally to limit my potential of being successful.
Yeah. Is there room for anything that is like not entirely necessary, like anything that provides like an extra bit of comfort or recreation? Because you're out there for 52 days, like that is a long time. Like, do you like include a deck of cards, and do people like sit and play cards at the end of the night? Like, do we have like a pillow or a pair of slippers or something that like maybe you didn't need but you wanted? Like, any room for stuff like that?
Yeah, you do. For that kind of stuff down up to base camp, you do. And then you have to really start shopping when you're thinking about Camp 1 or Camp 2, where you spend a couple days at each. Yeah, you do. And it's funny because base camp is an international tent city. It's about a mile long. And you have people from all across the world. You hear every language under the sun being spoken as you're walking through base camp. And everyone has their own little satellite cities set up amongst this greater city of expeditions. And so you know, and everything that goes to base camp can only be gotten up there in 3 ways, either on the back of a yak, a mule, or a doppio, usually a yak or a doppio, which is a half cow, half yak, a helicopter, or a porter. So it all has to be carried in. There are no roads that lead to base camp, so you can't drive stuff up there. So it takes months to even set up base camp. So for example, base camp itself they start setting that up in February, early March, even though the climbing season doesn't start till April. So, you know, there's people that are already running yak loads, helicopter loads, and porter loads up there a month and a half, 2 months out to start getting base camps ready. So under those situations, you can put a few things in your duffel bag, like for example, you know, like you said, cards, or a book, or, you know, board games and little things like that. Or you'd watch movies. We had a couple movie nights at base camp, you know, where you had this little projector shooting on, you know, a piece of vinyl, you know, that was taped to the inside of the tent, and these kind of things. So you try to have a couple of things that give you some sort of a comfort to being back home, because again, you're there a long time, and it's a constant mental game, and a lot of that mental game is sitting and waiting for the right opportunities to move on and to progress, you know, throughout the expedition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, I mean, 52 days up there, you know, like like I've met your lady, I've met your significant other in your life. That's really lovely. You know, 52 days is a long time to go without a lady, you know, in your life, you know, or any kind of relief for that matter. Like, just wondering, like, do you find time for self-care while you're on a 52-day excursion up Everest, or is there no room in your brain for that? Or you don't have to answer that.
I can't speak for everybody, but luckily I was so busy with this project that it wasn't something that really came across my mind too much. What did come across my mind was a promise that I made to my girlfriend Leslie, that you know. I made a promise to her that I will meet you June 4th in Manila, Philippines. So I was in Nepal for 63 days filming, because we shot the other stuff, you know, especially that you see in the 97-minute 2D documentary, all that cultural stuff that we shot down in the Kathmandu Valley. So that was an extra 11 days I was there filming that outside of the 52 days of Everest. And then I went to Malaysia for about 4 days, and then I met her in the Philippines, you know, to spend a week out in the Philippines, another week in Japan on the way back to the United States. And I promised her that June 4th, I was going to meet you in Manila. And so I knew I couldn't die. And this is something we can talk about later when you were talking about this whole life and death stuff that we touched on earlier. But that was another promise I had to keep. Regardless of anything else, I wasn't going to die, or I knew I had to keep my promise to her of not dying, because I knew that I was going to meet her on June 4th in Manila, and all of a sudden she shows up in Manila and I'm not there. You know, that would have been a horrible situation for her, let alone anybody back here in the United States. So, yeah, those kind of things were always in my head. Okay, I got to get the production done. I got to do this. I got to do that. And I got to promise myself to meet up with Leslie on June 4th in the Philippines.
Nice, dude. Well, that's awesome. And I mean, like you said, it's probably the better move to like have stuff like that fueling your drive. You know, it's like, you know, I made this promise, and like that's what you keep coming back to, and that's amazing. And I'm so happy that, like, you know, she was able to like provide that like drive for you. You know, you're like, no, I made a promise to her, and like, you know, that the fact that matters that much to you is beautiful. So I really love that. you know, I guess in like the similar vein of that last question, you know, I'm wondering like bodily functions, you know, like you're like in like, is it something that like you do a pretty good job of like getting a routine going, or was there like a moment where you're like in the middle of like a steep ice crack and then like your stomach starts gurgling, you're like, oh shit, I gotta take care of this.
Yeah, that happens. And, you know, the thing is, luckily I can lean on my training. You know, I had a lot of years of mountaineering experience before I went. And so I was in those situations before. But yeah, those are things, you know, depending on where you are on the mountain. For example, if you're in your tent, you're on camp 1, camp 2, whatever, you'd pee in an Nalgene bottle. But again, it's too cold to get out there. And at certain places, it's too dangerous to get out there. Like, for example, on camp 3 in that 5,000-foot ice wall called the Lhotse Face. There's people that have died literally getting out of their tent, forgetting that they should just be peeing in their bottle. They wanted to get outside the tent to pee. They forgot to put their crampons on, which are the spikes that are strapped to your bottom of your boots so you can stick into that 5,000-foot wall ice, and they literally slid down the Lhotse Face and died on something as dumb as going out to try to go pee, right? When they should have stayed in their sleeping bag, and they should have just leaned over and pee, which is a technique in its own, to be able to pee in an Nalgene bottle at 23,500 feet, you know, 20 below zero in a sleeping bag. So, but that's when you're leaning on to your training. There was also a time, you know, and there's stomach gurgle situations, you know, those things do arise, and you just hope you're in the right place at the right time. Otherwise, it can be disastrous. And I've actually spoke to people that when on their summit day, they had to make a decision. It's either everything goes right now in my down suit, or I lose my opportunity to summit Mount Everest. And so now they make that decision. And some of those people said, you know what, everything I've got in me goes in that down suit. And as miserable as that is, that's something I'll deal with, you know, later if I happen to make it to the summit or not. You know, so there's a lot of sacrifices you have to make. And you also plan too, because the thing is, a lot of people don't know is your digestive system actually shuts down as you get to 17,000 feet and higher, hence why you can't stay there indefinitely, and hence why there's never been a civilization that's been above 17,000 feet, because one of the things that happens to you physiologically is your digestive system shuts down. So a lot of that stuff never even makes it through your system, because you're burning so many calories, you know, anywhere between 2 to 20,000 calories a day, or actually 5 to 20,000 calories a day. Hence why I lost 27 pounds of muscle mass over the course of that time. You can't even put enough food in you to, you know, to try to maintain weight, let alone gain it. That a lot of that stuff just it's instantly eaten up. But there are situations where, yeah, you hope you're at the right place, and if you're not, you have to deal with it. You dig a cat, you know, for example, a little cat hole into the snow and the ice, and hopefully, you know, you can do it quick enough so you don't get frostbite on the private parts or freeze anything down there when you're doing it, and, you know, try to get bundled back up at the right time.
Man, so Arlen in chat says no showers for 52 days. I didn't even think of that, because you're out there sweating and lugging things around and just carrying so many things, climbing mountains. Do you ever get a chance? Is there anything in base camp? Is there any way to like to kind of relieve yourself with cleaning off in any way? Is that even a thing?
Depending on your base camp, and luckily our base camp, we had this little tiny 3 by 3 foot by 8 feet tall tent, if you want to call it, but it's basically like an old school bathtub shower situation, curtain, that you could go if you wanted to take that opportunity based on the temperature. You know, you had to kind of calculate, is the sun going to be out, and is it going to be 1 o'clock, and is it going to be warm enough that I could strip down and try to take a really, really quick shower off of water that's heated by a solar bag, essentially, that just, you know, thermally it can grab some heat from the outside because the sun is so tense. There was a couple times I did that, but I did that mainly for continuity reasons, for filming. So, you know, I didn't want to look in one scene, because when you're shooting, for example, in 2D, and even in the VR situation, there's situations when I'm interviewing people and so on. One scene, all of a sudden, I could have a full beard, and then the next scene that's not sequential in the sequence of that movie, you know, I don't have it anymore, or vice versa. So I had to be cognizant of making sure that the continuity was the same as well. And in those situations, I try to at least get some water over me and dry shave and kind of stuff like that in this little tiny mirror this big, you know, that I took with me, you know, that, for example, like a female travel mirror that you'd see maybe, you know, your girlfriends take with you on a trip, and then try to just do that kind of stuff and try to get a little bit clean. But yeah, it's nothing luxurious. And by the time I got back to Kathmandu, I took 3 consecutive showers at the hotel that first night we got back, and you couldn't imagine how just this constant, you know, black just dumping off your body, like, oh, I thought I was clean. No, take another shower and more. more and more. It's kind of like when you take a steamer to your rug or your carpet, you're like, wow, I didn't know my carpet was that disgustingly dirty. Well, that's what it's like after 52 days.
3 consecutive showers. Like you took a shower and then you like are drying off and you're like, no, I'm not clean. Go back in. And you're like, no, I'm still not clean. That's wild.
That's wild, man. I mean, geez, I remember going to Sturgis for a week on a Harley and sleeping on the floor, you know, in dirt, and like after like a week and a half, that shower, you know, when I got home was so freaking amazing. I can't even tell you. 52 days. You must have been in heaven in that shower. It must have been amazing.
Oh,
just the warm water alone, right?
Oh yeah, just the warm water alone, and the fact that nothing is telling me that I have to jump out of this thing right now was absolutely divine.
So you obviously prepared for this, as you should, because you're sitting here with us. You prepared because you didn't die. Thank you for preparing and surviving this thing. Was there anything once you got started that you realized that you weren't prepared for, or something that just completely caught you off guard?
A lot of stuff was, you know, because I watched every movie I could watch. I read everything I could. I became an Everest nerd. You know, I took in so much data about Everest because, again, I knew I wanted to be physically and mentally as prepared as possible, right? But then as soon as I stepped into the Khumbu icefall, I could just throw it all out the window. That's when I said the Russian roulette kicks in. I was like, you know what? My training is not going to save me from this situation. My training, or what I thought the icefall looked like, was not going to save me from this situation. So I just threw it right out the window. So everything I planned for when I got into the Khumbu icefall, I threw right out the window. Now, my techniques of what I learned over years and years and years of mountaineering training and my physical preparation, that did serve me subconsciously because, you know, something like an athlete when you're playing basketball or anything else, you don't think about when you're taking that three-point shot, or you don't think about shooting that soccer ball. You just do it, right? So that was just a subconscious response. But with regards to saying, yeah, you know, I've got this totally figured out and this is what's going to happen, forget about it. Just throw it all out the window and just hope that you can lean on what you have back here enough to get you through to the next phase.
Mm-hmm. Man, damn. So, you know, like, this is obviously an incredible accomplishment and something that, you know, I have to imagine changes you in some way. Like, in what ways would you say you feel like this experience has changed you as a person? Like, did it change your perspective on life at all? You know, like when you're in that shower, did you like have a new perspective on warm water? You know, like what did you take with you after completing this accomplishment?
Yeah, there was a couple things. Very good question. Is first and foremost, the little things that when you're back home that bothered you. Oh, the Amazon guy didn't come today. You know, the package was supposed to be here and it's not going to be there till Thursday. Or the trash guy didn't come this week because it was Memorial Day yesterday and so they got to wait a week. These little things that bother you just don't really bother you as much anymore, because when you see dead bodies and you put yourself in the hardest environment that you've ever put yourself in, these little things become very minuscule comparatively. That's one thing. The other thing is there's a 20% rule that I kind of talk about when I give speaking engagements or I talk to people about Everest or the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts of America, whatever, is like that. What people don't realize is, I don't care if you put 80 hours a week in the office, you've got 96 hours to your disposal. I don't care if you ran a marathon. I ran a marathon and a half every single week. I could have ran 2 marathons every week, because you realize when you're high on Everest that you have to go 20% harder than anything you've ever done in your whole life. And I played Division I college soccer, and that was a joke compared to how hard it was to climb Mount Everest. I was actually in better shape when I went to climb Everest than I was in my best soccer playing days. And I had to dig 20% deeper than anything I ever did in order to make it to the summit. But that 20% is also the difference between maybe getting you killed. I mean, because the difference between making it up and back down and not making it at all is as thin as a strand of hair. And that's that 20% that can get you there in order to make it there, but on the same token can get you to 341, you know, for the amount of people that have died trying to do it. And so that's something I really took home with me, is like, you know what, I've got 20% more in me. No matter what situation I'm in, I have 20% more that I can lean on to get me out of that situation or get me through that situation. And then the last thing is probably the spirituality aspect. I wasn't really more of a mutt when it comes to my spirituality. You know, I take the best of all these different, you know, spiritual beliefs and kind of make almost like a mutt kind of scenario of what life and the afterlife and so on may or may not be like. But what you cannot, or at least what I could not avoid, was how deeply spiritual Mount Everest is. Over the course of being in Nepal for 63 days and the Buddhism and the Hinduism, all that was one thing. But the 52-day process of going to the summit of Everest and back and spending it with a good friend, a lifelong brother from another mother father, as I like to call him, as he calls me, Tashi Sherpa. You know, he was a Buddhist monk for 12 years before he got into mountaineering. And I learned so much about Buddhism and how significant Mount Everest is to the Sherpa people and to the Tibetan Buddhists. They actually believe that Mount Everest is the goddess mother of the world. They call it Chomolungma. So where we have this vague construct of, oh, the goddess mother of the world or goddess mother Earth, it's the sky, it's the weather, it's whatever. No, for the Sherpa people and the Tibetan Buddhists, it is actually Mount Everest. And hence why you have this deep puja ceremony in order to ask permission to climb the mountain, you know, before you can even step foot on the mountain. You really get a sense of how significantly spiritual it is. And as you see in my films, one of the first things I did when I got to the summit, I bowed and I gave my respects to Chomolungma for allowing me safe passage to the summit and allowing me the honor to stand on top of her, you know, at that moment with my brother from another mother father, Tashi Sherpa. So that spiritual thing really that I never thought was going to ever affect me, it really did. And there's something to it. I can't put my finger on what it is, but it definitely has affected my life moving forward.
That's beautiful.
Wow.
Wow. I mean, take us to the summit now. You know, I feel like we just made it to the summit with you. Like, I mean, it's 52 days. I mean, I guess it's probably what, 50 days? Like how, I don't know how, like on what day do you summit?
Yeah, so in this case, it would have been day 49, one is 50, another 52, another, yeah, but so it would have been day 48, I think was the summit day.
So yeah, 48 days into this journey, like, you know, decades of promises to yourself, like you see it up there, like you dig deep, you push, and then bam, like you take that one step that feels to you like you just summited this thing. Like, like where are you? Like tell me what's going through your head. What were the feelings like? You know, like were you able to to sit in it for a little while?
I did, you know, again, I was fortunate. We had the whole upper mountain to ourselves, and I had the whole summit to myself with just Tashi Sherpa, as you see in both of the films, for 45 minutes. We were up there for 45 minutes all by ourselves. So I could see hundreds of miles into India, hundreds of miles into Tibet, hundreds of miles in Nepal. I could see the curvature of the earth. It was the most beautiful scenery that my eyes have ever taken in. But like I said, the first thing I did when I got up there, I bowed. I broke down. I bowed out of respect. There's Tibetan prayer flags up there, and they all have mantras on it that mean different things. But I bowed to my respects to Chomolungma out of my respect for Tashi that was with me and out of the respect for the mountain that he taught me about. And then I cried in my goggles. You see it, you don't see it, you don't know that's what I'm doing, but that's actually, I might as well just, you know, break it to you, that's what's going on. I'm crying in my goggles. And that's probably a release for me when I was 14 years old and I made that childhood promise to myself that one day I would climb that mountain, and that I've actually fulfilled it so many years later. So I gave my respects to the mountain. I cried out of that release, and then I had a very strong, you know, bromance bonding with Tashi before I started filming some more, you know, the VR and the 2D stuff, you know, because I knew I had to also film this stuff. And I had this really powerful, like almost like little speck on the surface of the moon looking back down at the blue planet, kind of a feeling like just being utterly grateful to be here and to be able to share it with only one other person for 45 minutes. You know, something you could plan for 1,000 times over and never be able to replicate that because of the scenarios and the logistics of what it takes to catch that weather window and to try to make it to the summit, and whether or not you're going to make it, and all the different factors that come into play.
I mean, are you thinking to yourself like, dude, this is the highest point on the planet. Like, this is it. Like, I cannot go higher than this. I feel like that's what I would be like. Wouldn't be able to release that from my brain. I'm like, oh my God, like this is the highest point on Earth. Like I can, that must, are you like me? Like, were you thinking about that, or was it like
that did when I was standing there looking out? Tashi was messing around with something. I'm just standing upright, and right as I started filming, I was just standing out in awe, because that's exactly right. You know, like I said, when I could see the curvature and I could see hundreds of miles, and I could see, you know, the 4th highest and the 5th highest mountain in the world and the 6th highest mountain in the world and the 8th highest mountain in the world all in front of me in the distance. It's just mind blowing. And yeah, I was like, I can't believe I'm actually here.
You were the highest point in the world, like at that point. And you are a tall guy too, so I'm willing to bet it's like one of the highest points ever.
You know what? That is a good question. That'd be a good stat to know. But yeah, theoretically, I'm 6'4", so maybe I stood at the pinnacle of pinnacles when it came to how tall my actual head was. But then I also realized, okay, I snapped out of it. I don't know how long it took for me to be just enamored by that, because I had to film, and then also had to realize I'm only halfway there. Because actually more people die on the descent than they do on the way up, and I knew I had to make it back down. And Tashi started having problems with his regulator. He started getting cold, and I gave him my mitts in order to keep his hands warm, and we had to descend down about 50 vertical feet and sit out in this kind of kidney alcove, protected from the wind a little bit, and started messing with his regulator and hopefully get his oxygen flow going again. Otherwise, that could have been extremely dicey. Luckily, we were able to, and so on. So, there were still some other matters that we had to attend to. Our rest of our team was still trying to make it up to the summit. We didn't know where they were and what condition they were in. But yeah, I did have for a brief moment, again, I don't know, because time kind of just wanders a little bit in that situation. You're hypoxic. You're almost feeling drunk because of how hypoxic you are. The adrenaline, endorphins running through your head and all that kind of stuff. But I definitely did have that moment of, wow, I am standing on the highest point on earth.
Amen. That's so rad.
Wow. So you complete something like this, and do you think to yourself that this was an absolutely wonderful and amazing experience, or are you like, this was hell and I could never do something like this again? Like, what was your overall feeling of this whole journey? Was it enjoyable at all?
Yeah, it was enjoyable at times. It was hell at times. It was gratifying at times, and it was a complete pain in the ass a lot of the time as well. So it's literally all across the board, almost like I'm schizophrenic. And it depends on the situation and what we're talking about. Is it a pre-production thing? Is it an editing thing? Is it, trying to get up the Lotzi face? Or is it trying to, carry camera gear to Camp 2? Whatever, being sick. I got the sickest I've ever been in my life, shivering in a 40 below sleeping bag while I'm wearing a 40 below down suit, shivering in Camp 2, being sick for 11 days straight, not knowing if I was going to make it or not. And they wanted a helicopter to rescue me back to Kathmandu. And I said, no, I'm going to stick this out, hell or high water, and these are all the situations that, you start to remember when you're talking about it. But at the time, I forgot a lot of that. So,
yeah, man. Well, honestly, dude, like, I could talk to you forever about this. And then I could also talk to you forever about like just other stuff too. But we can't do that. And we're going to have a pretty hard stop here in a few minutes, but I do have one more question, and that is VR related. And it's like, so now you've made this VR video, like, has this opened any kind of doors for you in terms of like other VR stuff? Like, do you like now like pay attention to VR? Do you have a headset at home? Like, have you done any VR games, any first person VR shooters that you've played that you've liked, or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. The first and foremost, if it wasn't for the Quest Everest VR, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you. So I got to meet you guys in Rotterdam, and I got to meet you through AIXR, through the monthly meetups that we do, on the arts and media and so on. So that to me was worth it alone, because now I have a new brothership that I would have never had if I wouldn't have put a VR camera strapped into my shoulder. So yeah, that there. And then now it's also leading on to what we're going to do with our next production, what's going to be shot in Africa. We're going to add the VR, AR elements to it and so on. So yeah, this has definitely opened up a whole new way, or an additional factor to what the Quest was intended to be, and how this is going to pan out moving forward.
Well, that's so stoked, and of course, I'm stoked about that, and of course, that we'll be following along, and we'll be can't wait for the next African adventure movie to come out.
Oh yeah, that'll be great.
Is there anything that's been unsaid? Like anything that's really important about what happened, or the project, or anything that you want people to know before we wrap this up?
The only thing I can ask for is if people, take the time, the 97 minutes to watch the Quest Everest, or to watch the 26 minutes Quest Everest VRs, hopefully they learn something and they gain something from it. Because really that's the big, through point here is it's not even about me. I'm just a conduit to the information. My job is just to provide the experience and the information to the people out there around the world that they can hopefully experience it, through me, and the people's stories that I expose, like Tashi and the Buddhist monks and all this other stuff that we talk about. And if they get that, then that's all I can ask for. To me, that's the most important thing, is that they learned something, that they were entertained along the way, and hopefully they were able to go somewhere that they normally would not have an opportunity to go to. And if that's the case, then I've, you know, achieved all the goals I possibly could with this, and that's all I could ask for.
Bro, I watched it, and all three of those things happened. Like, hands down, mission accomplished, at least as far as I'm concerned. So, I have put a link in the description to how you can watch the Quest Everest VR. It'll take you to a page that you can basically choose your selection based on the headset that you're using. I watched mine in the Quest. If you click on the Oculus option, it takes you to a place where you can basically save the 3-part series as individual videos. And then when you go to like Meta TV or Quest TV or Horizon TV or whatever it's called, the app and the headset, they're sitting there waiting for you. So it was actually a relatively frictionless experience for me to watch these. So click on the link, save them to your MetaQuest TV app, and then go throw your headset on and pull them up, and you can see this first person perspective, which, by the way, I've never spun my camera or my chair so much in a VR thing ever. Like, I was spinning 360 the whole time. Like, you never know like what's forward after a while, because like it is just a 360 view of insanely amazing mountaintops
of just beauty.
Yep. So dude, Alex, thank you so much, man. We really appreciate you. You are an absolute inspiration. You are a warrior. You are a badass, and I'm happy that we finally were able to make this happen. So don't be a stranger, stay in touch, and maybe we'll do this again after you go to Africa.
I greatly appreciate it, guys, and thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and talk to me about this. And, you know, I look forward to keeping in contact with you about what's going on in the future as well.
Looking forward to it. All right, everybody, help us say bye to Alex Harz, the dude who hiked Everest and brought it to us in VR. Thanks, bro.
See you later, brother.
Bye. And he's gone.
He
Never to be seen again. Just kidding. We'll see him again. We will see him again.
Absolutely.
We're going to wrap this up pretty quick, everybody. But shout out to the live crew, you know, Arlen, ClassyGrandma, Mad Vegan, John Coco 64, MickeyBerr, Phil Marshall, Kensei Gaming VR, Jammy Rex slid up in here, Qcreator, Awesome Tatum, RedSlashAce, ClassyGrandma gave us money. Shout out to ClassyGrandma. Thank you for the donations. That mean, you helped us pull off our CES party. I don't know if you knew that, but you did, because we used some contributions from Between Realities to make sure that we were able to host that party. So thank you all very much for your contributions. GT and Assassin32, all of y'all. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's great seeing all you guys. I missed you guys, and you know, we'll see you on a much more regular basis from this point
next
forward.
week. That's what it says on the thing.
It does say next week. It also said that when we when we took off the last time, but we will be here
next week.
We'll see you soon.
We will be here. All right, we're doing it. All right, we're doing it. Next week we'll be here. We'll have a guest. It's gonna be great. Thank you all for tuning in and witnessing the return of Between Realities. We will see you next week. Have a good one. Join our Discord, I guess. Links in the description to Alex's stuff. Click on it. We'll see you next time.
Go check this out for sure. See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.